capture.
A long campaign is now.
This is the car market in Mogadishu.
NATO's military success against
many Western nations.
This is on assignment.
Hello and welcome to On Assignment, coming to you from Studio 55 at the Voice of America. I'm Philip Alexio, along with Alex Villarreal.
Our first stop, Thailand, where VOA's Bangkok correspondent is following the aftermath of the nation's military coup.
Then it's all eyes on Brazil for the World Cup. VOA's Sonny Young joins us to talk about all things going on there.
Why Somali immigrants are fleeing Kenya to return to their homeland.
And the passing of a world-famous American poet, author, and teacher of life.
We're on the story, on the air, and on assignment.
Thailand's military staged a coup on May 22nd, calling it necessary to prevent civil war. More than 250 politicians, scholars, activists, and journalists were ordered to turn themselves into the military authorities. The moves prompted an international backlash, with the U.S. cutting aid to Thailand and canceling a series of military exercises and visits.
And Thailand's ruling military did not stop there. It voided the constitution, censored the media, and banned public gatherings of 5 or more people. It also imposed strict curbs on political speech.
VOA correspondent Steve Herman has been reporting for us from Bangkok since the military took over the government. This is Thailand's 12th coup since 1932, and I asked Steve what it's like to be in Bangkok during this time.
Well, for me, it's a bit of deja vu because I covered my first coup here in Bangkok in 1981. And that was one of the coups that was not successful. There have been about 19 successful and unsuccessful since 1932. This one, by all intents and purposes, at least until now, has been successful because the military and the army chief have taken firm control of the country. The army chief, Prayut Chan-o-cha, is not only controlling the military, he's also controlling the executive and legislative branches of government as well. And there's been no real opposition in the streets, unlike other coups. There's no shooting going on. There have been some anti-coup demonstrations from grassroots groups, as well as some of the die-hard red shirts who are supporters of the ousted prime ministers, both Thaksin Shinawatra, who was ousted in a 2006 coup, and his sister Yingluck, who was ousted by a judicial decree just before the coup that occurred here during May.
Now, is this coup following the same script, say, as a couple of the other ones, or are things a little bit different this time around?
Oh, I think compared to the last coup in 2006, it's a little bit of a tougher crackdown. Some of the loyalists to the military and the opponents of the Thaksin group were critical that the military in 2006 did not eradicate the influence of Thaksin Shinawatra from Thai politics. And I had one of the top coup spokesmen, Colonel, tell me, when I asked him, is the purpose of this coup now to eradicate the influence of Thaksin and his supporters from Thai politics, he replied in the affirmative. And although they're talking about balance and reconciliation, they're definitely coming down a lot harder on the red shirts as opposed to the yellow shirts being more of a pro-monarchy group. And we're also involved in the demonstrations that went on for about 6 months before the coup, calling for the ouster of the government.
Now, it obviously seems like this is sort of normal for Thailand. So it's a rather bizarre democracy, really, because anytime something gets tilted, the military jumps in and takes over control. So what do the people say about the kind of democracy that they live in?
What's very interesting, I think, about this coup this time around, as opposed to past years where the military could step in, they could censor the press, control the television stations, and really keep information from being disseminated. These days, social media is a much stronger force than it was ever before. And while we had Facebook go down for about 90 minutes one day, the military is also talking about monitoring communications on social media sites such as Line. And there's talk that they may shut down other elements of the internet if there's too much opposition to the coup online over the next few weeks.
How is all of this affecting tourism?
Well, it's been affecting tourism for a period of time because of these big anti-government demonstrations we were having before the coup. Tourism has been off, and I think especially the Japanese and the Chinese have been very skittish about coming to Thailand amid all of this political turmoil. And it's affecting the entire economy. There is no doubt about that. Tourism is about 7% of the GDP. A larger chunk is the foreign direct investment. We're already hearing about manufacturers that are putting off plans for new investment, for expansion. And although Thais are buying stocks since the coup has happened, they see this as something positive, that it's ending a period of political turmoil. Foreign investors are still much more skittish or are taking a wait-and-see attitude.
All right, and of course, that was Steve Herman, VOA's Bangkok correspondent. Now, those in Thailand who oppose this coup have been using the three-fingered salute that we've seen in the popular Hunger Games series as a quiet symbol of defiance, but Thailand's military has threatened to arrest those people who flash that sign.
All right, listen, we're going to take a break now, but when we come back, Sonny Young, he's going to be here to talk all things World Cup. You're watching On Assignment. Well, you've been waiting 4 years. We're talking about 32 teams, 64 matches throughout Brazil. We're talking about the World Cup 2014, of course. Now, everybody there has been scrambling to get ready for the June 12th kickoff. Well, joining me is Mr. Sonny Young, the high-octane man of Sunny Side of Sports. And Sonny, listen, I need to know what is going on with all the protesting. It seems a little unusual for this World Cup.
Yeah, lots of protests, not just in Rio, Phil, also in Sao Paulo and other Brazilian cities. Roughly half the Brazilian population seems opposed to hosting the World Cup. They're protesting the fact that billions of dollars are being spent on the tournament, and they feel it could be better spent for social services such as healthcare, education, and housing.
Okay, so they really got a big problem with that. Okay, so then we've got the construction issues, which obviously has been a big problem. It seems like worse this time than in the past. What is that? What's going on?
You use that word scrambling, and the scrambling has been taking place at the stadiums. Opening match will be in Sao Paulo, and they've just recently been putting in seats in that stadium to finish it, and finishing touches elsewhere around Brazil.
So they just end up having some standing room only, right? It's like you can watch it standing, you don't have to sit, I guess. All right, so now we've got what's going on. We got these World Cup songs. They got a World Cup song and an anti-World Cup song, actually.
The official World Cup song, Phil, is titled "We Are One." Many Brazilians are upset that it really doesn't have a Brazilian flavor, only one Brazilian singer on the song, Claudia Lette, and then it also features Americans Jennifer Lopez and Pitbull. So they're saying, well, we're the Brazilians. Why aren't the Brazilians in the song?
Well, that doesn't make sense. They're the host country, right?
You would think it would be more kind of samba flavored, maybe?
Yeah, okay. All right, so then now let's get to the players. And we talked about this in the past, but what about some controversy and maybe some notable players, things we need to know about going into the World Cup?
Well, Phil, I think the last time we chatted about the World Cup, you brought up this Uruguayan star, Luis Suarez, plays for Liverpool, leading scorer in the English Premier League this past season, 31 goals. He recently underwent knee surgery, and so one of the controversies is he going to play in Brazil? And the team doctor says his recovery has been going very well, and look for him out on the field in Brazil during the tournament.
All right, we'll keep an eye on him. Now, what about your sleeper teams? Because we know that Brazil is obviously favored.
I think you have to consider Brazil the favorites. Their neighbor, Argentina, led by Lionel Messi from Barcelona, great player. I think they have to be considered one of the favorites. Germany, 1990, three-time World Cup champion. They're a great team, ranked number 2 in the world. They're two of the other favorites for the trophy.
All right, excellent. Mr. Sonny Young, everybody, the king of sunny side of sports, filled with plenty of octane. All right, thanks, Sonny.
Thank you, Phil.
All right, listen, when we come back, we're going to take a look at another story. The Somalis in Kenya feeling the heat and returning home. You're watching On Assignment. In Kenya, a security crackdown is underway as Kenyan authorities target terrorists and their alleged supporters. The raids follow the Somali militant group Al-Shabaab's deadly shooting last year in a Nairobi mall.
But in the face of the crackdown, even ordinary members of Kenya's Somali community are feeling unwelcome. Many of them say they have had enough and they are going home, as VOA East Africa correspondent Gabe Joslow told me when we spoke. Why are we seeing Somalis leaving Kenya?
It's all the result of this major security crackdown that was launched by the Kenyan government in the first week of April. Basically what they've done is they've sent Kenyan police into mostly ethnic Somali neighborhoods in Nairobi and other parts of the country, looking for illegal immigrants, looking for terror suspects, anybody who's been doing anything illegal. And the idea is it's supposed to be in reaction to some of the sort of attacks, grenade attacks and others that we've seen in the country in the last couple of months. But what's happened instead, according to a lot of people in these neighborhoods, is the police have come in, they've demanded bribes, they've really harassed members of the Somali population, the Somali community. They've been stealing or sometimes destroying property. And a lot of Somalis just feel completely abused and completely threatened by these operations.
Ifra Osman has just returned with her daughter and baby son after 6 years in Nairobi. She says she had had enough of what she described as constant police harassment.
I took a decision after they knocked on my door at 1 o'clock in the morning. They knocked the door. They woke my baby up. So at that time, I made the decision to leave.
And what are they finding when they do return to Mogadishu? Because the city has seen a lot of unrest, a lot of instability. So what happens when they go back?
There's no doubt that there's still a huge problem with insecurity in Mogadishu. We see a lot of sporadic bomb attacks that are launched by members of the Al-Qaeda-linked group Al-Shabaab, mostly targeting government institutions or foreigners. But the city is still very dangerous. But at the same time, for a lot of Somalis who go back there, they're not alone in that there are, first of all, huge numbers of people returning from Kenya already who have roots and family in Mogadishu. And there's also huge numbers from the diaspora across the world who have been returning in the last couple of years. There's just Somalis coming from the United States, coming from the UK, coming from Sweden, Canada, all over the place, and coming there to set up jobs, to raise their families, to rebuild the city. So there's actually a lot of sort of goodwill and momentum towards making that city a better place and a growing community of people who have come back.
Now let's get back to what's going on inside Kenya. You talk about the official line that Kenyan authorities are saying being that they're trying to root out terrorism, but then you have people like one man that you spoke to, one Somali, said Kenya is fighting against Islam as a whole. What's the truth really here?
Well, I mean, the Kenyan government has a lot of reason to want to crack down on actual problems with terrorism. We've seen just in the last week, we've seen some really coordinated attacks that have caused sort of massive casualties. It's destroyed the tourism industry. It's threatened the entire economy of the country. So the government, is right in wanting to do something. It's really the execution of this program that's been a problem, and that's why you get the perception that it's targeting one community or another. And it seems on the ground that the majority of people who have been arrested, who have been detained, who have been held in these concentration camp-like environments have mostly been ethnic Somalis. So it's easy to see how that perception that this is a war against one person has developed.
What is life like for Somalis in Kenya?
Well, it depends on which area you're in. In Nairobi, for instance, Somalis here A lot of them control a lot of the major businesses around here. They own property, they have stores. There's a section of Nairobi known as the Eastleigh neighborhood, which is also known as Little Mogadishu, which is really kind of like a booming business center. So Somalis, a lot of them also, I should say, there's a difference between Somalis who have come directly from Somalia and now are living in Kenya, and those who are what we'd say ethnic Somali. It's more of an ethnic identity. Some of them have been here since before Kenya was Kenya. So, Somali community, it's an interesting segment of society here, in that they're on one hand marginalized socially, but at the same time have a lot of economic control and growing political control.
And our thanks, as always, to VOA's Gabe Joslow for those insights from the ground.
Legendary American author, poet, playwright, and activist Maya Angelou died May 28th. Her family says she passed quietly at her North Carolina home. She was 86.
Angelou rose to fame after writing about her early life as a poor African-American girl in the segregated South in her 1969 memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. VOA's Mary Alice Salinas reported on Angelou's life and legacy, and she shared with me some of the lessons she leaves behind.
Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream.
She touched so many lives, and a lot of us did not have the opportunity to meet her, but you did.
I did. I got to meet her. It's been about 10 years now, and I had her on a live show. I interviewed her live. During the interview, when she started to recite her poetry, it's like it blew me back. I thought, oh boy, the space around her opened up. It was so powerful. We had a very personal conversation after the live shot, and she expressed to me how important it is to always be gracious and to keep hold on to your grace. Last night I was reading a response by Oprah Winfrey. She was...
They were very close.
They were very close. Maya Angelou was her mentor. She called her my sister, my mother. And she said this quote from Oprah Winfrey: "She moved through the world with unshakable calm, confidence, and a fierce grace." And that's when I thought, wow, that's what Maya Angelou told me to hold on to, just that grace.
Destination where all signs tell us it is possible and imperative. I open my mouth to the Lord and I won't turn back, no.
I want to read a quote now that is one of the quotes that many people credit as being one of her more famous quotes. "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel."
Oh,
yeah.
Yep.
And that's, something that she talked about a lot, is how you relate to people. So what would you identify, aside from your experience with her, what would you identify as being some of her most important life lessons?
Well, I think it's that what is your full potential? To listen within yourself and ask yourself, are you meeting your full potential? And in the White House, in awarding her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, they said she raised the nation's conscience. And part of our responsibility is to push ourselves and to reach our full potential.
This year's Medal of Freedom recipients reveal the best of who we are and who we aspire to be.
She did it in a way where we ask ourselves individually and then collectively as a nation, or collectively as a world.
When the history books reflect on Maya Angelou, what do you think they're going to say about her and what she did and what she meant to this country?
I think it's, first of all, she detailed and logged what really happened in U.S. history in terms of the segregation and the racism that we went through and came out of at the end. And I think ultimately, and you've heard this said again and again, and I think it's true, that she was a teacher. That there's one quote where she says, "I am not a writer who can teach.
That I'm a teacher who can write."
It does seem like she really viewed her role here as being a mentor and trying to help people through her own experiences better their own lives. What will be her legacy?
I think it is, again, to what is possible. Where she came from, the intense poverty, the abuse, living in the segregated South, so traumatized that she wouldn't speak, to sitting in the White House with the president, putting, the Medal of Freedom around your neck and affectionately kissing her. That's possible. And we as human beings, no matter where you live on the world and all the challenges that we have, turn to people like that. And throughout history, we get people like Maya Angelou. And I think that's why. She shows us the strength within ourselves and what can be.
You may bury me in the bottom of Manhattan. I will rise.
Wow, such a remarkable person Maya Angelou was. And it's interesting when you see all this coverage of her and her life that we call ourselves the voice of America, but a lot of people refer to Maya Angelou as being a voice of America, or perhaps even the voice.
Yes, certainly one of the major voices of our time here in this country, no question about it.
Yeah.
Well, now on to another woman focused on triumph over suffering. Marisa Roth has spent nearly 30 years documenting the effect of war on women through the lens of her camera.
Her photographs illustrate women's suffering, but also the resilience of the human spirit. VOA's Mike O'Sullivan has that story from Los Angeles.
Marisa Roth lost family members in the Holocaust, and she is drawn to stories of those who survived it. She photographed many for the Simon Wiesenthal Center Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles. As a former news photographer, her work has taken her to the edge of war zones. This 1988 photo of women and children refugees in Pakistan was one of the first of a series suggested by a colleague.
And she said, there's a story that nobody cares about, and this was towards the end of the 10-year war between the Soviet Union and Afghanistan, and she said, there's 100,000 Afghan war widows, and nobody cares. And I thought, well, I care.
Her journey would lead to a Kosovar refugee camp in Albania and to Japan to meet survivors of the Hiroshima atomic bombing. In Northern Ireland, she photographed a former bomber turned peace activist and a woman who lost her husband to the sectarian violence, who offered Roth an insight.
She said, I bet you find that women are the same everywhere. And so I learned a lot from my subjects because I thought, wow, she's really right. And I think really the constants are the absolute fundamentals of life. It's keeping home and hearth and keeping children healthy and safe and fed. It's keeping families together.
From the Balkans to Pakistan and Southeast Asia, she has shown the scars of war, including victims and survivors of the Khmer Rouge brutality in Cambodia, and children in Vietnam born with birth defects caused by the defoliant Agent Orange. Roth also shows the grief of American mothers who lost sons in Iraq. Roth's most recent work has again taken her halfway around the world, this time to document an endangered culture. She is publishing a book of photographs of Tibet, highlighting its Buddhist religion, its art and people. Mike O'Sullivan, VOA News, Los Angeles.
All right, and that does it for us today. But before we go, we'd like to send a shout out to our newest On Assignment affiliate, MTV Channel Limited in Colombo, Sri Lanka. Glad to have you all aboard.
Absolutely, and everyone can watch On Assignment anytime at voanews.com, Facebook, and YouTube.
That does it for us today. We'll see you next time.